We spent a lot of time on this show talking about the cool parts of mega projects.
Oh, yeah, the glamorous side.
Right. We talk about the engineering marvels, the massive cranes, the concrete pouring schedules, just
Yeah.
the sheer scale of building something like a hydroelectric dam or a new airport.
It's what ends up on the Discovery Channel.
Exactly. It's highly visual. But today we're going to talk about the thing that actually makes those cranes move. And it's not diesel.
No, it is
It's
not.
not electricity either. It's cash.
Cash flow is oxygen. I mean, I've said it for years. You can have the most brilliant engineers in the world. The best blueprints, the most robust supply chain.
Yeah.
But if the cash stops flowing for even 2 weeks, the project suffocates, the site just goes silent instantly.
So today we are doing a deep dive into the lung capacity of these projects, I guess you could say. We're unpacking Clause 14 of the FIDI 2017 Conditions of Contract for EPC Turnkey Projects.
Right, the famous Silver Book.
The Silver Book, yes. And specifically, we're looking at the legal text regarding contract price and payment.
Clause 14. Contract, price, and payment. I know it sounds incredibly dry. It sounds like the part of the contract you just sort of skim over to get to the technical specs.
Which would be a mistake.
A massive mistake. I'm telling you, this is the heartbeat of the commercial relationship. If you don't understand Clause 14, you really shouldn't be signing the contract.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to decode how money actually moves in a billion-dollar infrastructure deal. Because looking at this source material, it is definitely not as simple as, I did the work, now pay me.
Not at all.
It looks more like a high-stakes board game. There are very specific rules traps and pretty severe penalties.
I wouldn't even call it a game. It's a minefield. It's a really complex dance of bank guarantees, retention money certifications, and extremely strict timelines. It is way less like paying a standard bill and more like navigating a legal obstacle course every single month.
Well, let's put on our boots and walk the course then.
Let's do it.
We have to start at the top, which is the price. Clause 14.1 sets the contract price. Now, the Silver Book is generally known as a lump sum contract.
Yes.
And to me, lump sum implies a fixed price tag. Like, I agree to build you a power plant for $500 million. If it costs me $600 million, I lose. If it costs me $400 million, I win. Is it really that rigid?
In principle, yes. But if you read the fine print of Clause 14.1, it's a lump sum with a pretty massive asterisk.
Okay.
It says the payment is the lump sum subject to adjustments, additions, or deduction.
Adjustments for what, though? I thought the whole point of the Silver Book was passing the risk entirely to the contractor.
It is mostly. The contractor takes the lion's share of the risk on the pricing. But look at Clause 14.1b. It talks about taxes and duties.
Right.
The contractor pays all of those. The price is not adjusted for taxes unless there is a specific change in law. That links back to Clause 13.6.
Okay, so if the local government just decides to raise the corporate tax rate halfway through the build, I just have to eat that cost.
You eat it, unless it specifically qualifies as a change in law under 13.6, you were totally on the hook.
Wow.
But the bigger trap, the one that I see contractors fall into constantly, is actually in Clause 14.1c.
Is that the part about the quantities?
Yes, it's about the schedule of quantities.
I saw this.
Right. Now, in other contracts, like, say, the FIDI Red Book, you have a bill of quantities. It's a remeasurement contract, meaning it says dig 1,000 cubic meters of dirt.
Okay.
If you hit solid rock and have to dig 2,000 meters, you get paid for 2,000. The price flexes with the reality on the ground.
That seems perfectly fair. You get paid for what you actually do.
It is fair. But the Silver Book flips that completely on its head. Clause 14.1c explicitly warns that if quantities are set out in a schedule, they are not taken as the actual required quantities.
They're estimates.
Exactly. They are estimated. They are for reference only.
Wait, hold on. So if the schedule given to me says, 1,000 meters of piping, and I base my lump sum price on buying exactly 1,000 meters.
But the design actually ends up requiring 1,500 meters.
Yeah, what happens then?
You are buying 1,500 meters, but you are only getting paid your original lump sum. The risk of the quantity estimation is entirely on the contractor.
That feels incredibly dangerous. Why would anyone sign a contract where the quantities listed in the actual document aren't legally binding?
Because the employer wants price certainty. They want to know the final absolute number before the first shovel hits the dirt. They are paying a premium for that certainty. Usually, the contractor pads their price significantly to cover this exact risk.
That makes sense.
But if you are a naive contractor and you just look at the schedule and think, oh, I'll just claim for the extras later, Clause 14.1c is sitting right there to tell you, no, you won't.
So the big lesson for anyone listening is do your own homework on the quantities before you sign anything. Do not trust the schedule.
Exactly. Treat the schedule as a rough guide, not a promise.
Okay, so we've established the price is this scary fixed beast. Now let's talk about getting the project moving. These projects require massive upfront capital. You need to mobilize a workforce, build a temporary camp, order tons of steel. You can't do that on $0.
And that brings us to Clause 14.2, the advance payment.
The signing bonus.
It is definitely not a bonus. You need to think of it as an interest-free loan from the employer to the contractor just to get the ball rolling. It's usually around 10 to 15% of the total contract price.
An interest-free loan sounds great, but I assume the employer doesn't just hand over a suitcase full of cash and hope you show up to the site on Monday morning.
Definitely not. Security is absolutely paramount here. Before a single cent is paid, Clause 14.2.1 requires the contractor to provide an advance payment guarantee.
Which is what exactly?
It has to be a guarantee from a bank the employer approves. Basically, if the contractor takes the mobilization money and runs or goes bankrupt, the bank steps in and pays the employer back.
So the employer is never really at risk. They either have the cash or they have an ironclad guarantee from a major bank.
Precisely. Now, since it is a loan, it has to be paid back. And this is where the math gets a little tricky when you look at Clause 14.2.3. The repayment doesn't happen by you writing a monthly check back to the employer.
Right, it happens through deductions from your future earnings.
Exactly. It's amortized against your progress payments.
I was looking at the formula in the text. It seems to have a sort of delayed start.
Yes, there is a grace period built in. Deductions usually commence when the total of certified interim payments exceeds 10% of the contract price.
So for the first 10% of the actual work I do, I get to keep my full paycheck.
That's right. That helps you stabilize your cash flow during that really expensive mobilization phase. But once you hit that 10% threshold, the amortization kicks in hard. The standard rate is 25%.
That sounds incredibly steep. So for every dollar I earn after that point, the employer just keeps 25 cents.
Until the initial loan is fully repaid, yes. And you have to actively budget for that. Suddenly, your monthly income drops by a quarter, but your site expenses are still running at 100%.
Yeah.
If you haven't modeled that specific drop in your cash flow forecast, you are going to run out of money halfway through the job.
There was one other detail in the advance payment section that looked like a hidden trapdoor. Something about the expiry date of the guarantee.
Oh, yeah, this is the nuclear option.
The nuclear option.
The bank guarantee has an expiry date. Clause 14.2 says that if the advance payment hasn't been fully repaid by 28 days before that expiry date, the contractor must extend the guarantee.
And if they don't, like maybe their finance department is just being slow,
then the employer can claim the entire outstanding balance immediately. They can just call the bond.
Wow. So even if the physical project is going perfectly fine, just missing that one paperwork deadline allows the employer to claw back potentially millions of dollars instantly?
Yes. It forces the contractor to stay incredibly disciplined on their admin. You do not want to be the project manager who forgot to renew the bond and caused a massive liquidity crisis for your whole company.
Definitely not. All right, let's move into the monthly grind. We are mobilized. We have our advance. Now we enter Clause 14.3, the application for interim payment.
In the real world, we just call this the monthly valuation, but the contract strictly calls it a statement. I want to emphasize that word.
Statement.
It is not an invoice. An invoice is just a request for payment. A statement under FIDIC is a comprehensive, detailed dossier of the project's entire status.
I look at the list of requirements for it. It's items I through X. It's a massive laundry list.
It is.
Yeah.
You aren't just billing for the concrete you poured in August. You are stating the total value of all work executed from the beginning of time until now.
Right.
Then you add changes in legislation, you add changes in cost. Then you subtract the retention money, you subtract the advance payment repayment. It is a complex cumulative calculation every single month.
And the format of this document matters, right? Clause 14.3a says it must be in a form acceptable to the employer.
That is a classic delay tactic right there. If you submit a messy spreadsheet or if you don't include all the proper supporting documents, the employer can just look at it and say, this isn't a valid statement.
And if it's not valid, the clock doesn't start.
Exactly. The 56-day payment clock doesn't even begin ticking until the statement is accepted.
So you really need to get your templates agreed upon before you even start digging.
Absolutely. Agree on the exact format on day one.
Now, speaking of cash flow, there is a specific clause that addresses a huge problem in construction, which is paying for stuff that isn't actually built yet. Clause 14.5, plant and materials intended for the works.
This one is a lifeline for contractors. Imagine you are building a massive thermal power plant. You have ordered these huge turbines from Germany. They cost $20 million.
Yeah.
You have to pay the manufacturer to get them shipped. They arrive at the site, but you can't install them yet because the foundation isn't ready.
So normally you wouldn't get paid for them because they aren't technically work executed.
Correct. You would be carrying that $20 million hole in your bank account for maybe 6 months. Clause 14.5 allows the employer to pay you for those materials before installation.
But surely the employer hates doing this. They are paying for a turbine that is literally just sitting in a wooden crate.
They don't love it, and that's exactly why the hurdles to get that money are so high. If the items are shipped, you need a clean bill of lading and evidence that the freight is fully paid.
Right.
If they are delivered to the site, they must be properly stored and protected. You can't just leave sensitive electronics sitting out in the rain and expect to be paid for them.
And I saw that there is yet another guarantee required here.
Yes. The employer won't just trust you. You need to provide a bank guarantee specifically for the value of those materials. So if the turbine mysteriously disappears from the site or if it gets damaged, the employer is financially covered.
And even if you jump through all those hoops, the shipping docks, the proper storage, the new bank guarantee, you still don't get the full price. The text mentions an 80% rule.
That's right. The employer only pays 80% of the determined value of those materials.
Why only 80% though? Why not the full cost if I have already provided a bank guarantee?
It acts as a buffer. It protects against minor price fluctuations, but more importantly, it keeps the contractor motivated.
Ah, I see.
If I pay you 100% for the turbine while it's just sitting in a warehouse, you have a lot less urgency to actually install it. Holding back that 20% until it is permanently part of the works keeps the pressure on you to finish the physical job.
Smart. It's cruel, but it's very smart. Okay, so we've submitted this massive, complicated statement. Now the ball is in the employer's court. Clause 14.6 covers the issue of interim payment.
The employer has 28 days to review all your math and issue a notice.
The burning question here, and I think this is what every single contractor fears, is can the employer just decide not to pay? Can they just say, I'm not happy with your progress, so I'm withholding funds this month?
This is easily the most common area of dispute. Clause 14.6.2 is very specific about this. The employer can withhold money, but only for valid reasons explicitly defined in the contract.
So what actually counts as a valid reason?
Well, if the work isn't in accordance with the contract, let's say you built a retaining wall, but it's crooked, the employer can estimate the exact cost of tearing down and fixing that specific wall and withhold that amount.
So they can't just withhold your whole monthly check because of one bad wall.
No, it has to be proportional to the defect. Or if the contractor is failing to perform a specific contractual obligation, they can withhold until it's rectified. But they cannot just withhold money vaguely because they are short on cash or because they just don't like your attitude.
But Clause 14.6.3 adds a little twist here. It talks about correction or modification.
Right. This basically says that no interim payment is ever truly final. If the employer realizes they overpaid you last month, maybe they miscalculated a quantity or they missed a defect that was already covered up, they can retroactively correct it in this month's payment. They could just claw the money back.
So as a contractor, you can never really relax. Every dollar in your account is somewhat provisional until the very end of the project.
Exactly right.
Let's talk about timing. We've done the work. We've submitted the perfect statement. Clause 14.7 lays out the schedule. Typically, the contractor gets paid 56 days after submitting the statement. But we all know employers love to pay late. What happens then?
This is where Clause 14.8 comes in. And honestly, it's the contractor's best friend. It gives you the right to financing charges.
Financing charges.
Yes.
That's a very polite way of saying interest.
It is interest, but you have to look at the rate. The default is 3% above the central bank lending rate of the currency's country, and it is compounded monthly.
3% above central bank rates. That is aggressive. That's practically credit card territory.
It is entirely designed to be punitive. It effectively turns the employer into a high-interest borrower if they are late. But here is the real aha moment for anyone listening, and this is crucial. The contractor does not need to submit a formal notice or claim to get this interest.
Wait, really? I don't have to write a formal letter saying, hey, you're late, start paying me interest.
No. Clause 14.8 is totally explicit. The contractor is entitled to this without the need to submit a statement or any formal notice. It is an automatic entitlement the second they are late.
That is huge. So if the money is one single day late, the meter just starts running legally.
Yes. And I've seen contractors who are afraid to rock the boat during the project, so they don't mention the interest. They just let it slide.
Right, to keep the relationship smooth.
But then at the end of the job, when there is inevitably a final account dispute, they just pull out a spreadsheet showing $500,000 in accrued financing charges. It is a massive bargaining chip.
I love that. It's like a silent weapon. Let's look at clause 14.9, the retention money. I always think of this as a forced savings account.
That's a very charitable way to view it. I view it as a hostage situation.
A hostage situation.
The employer holds back a percentage, usually 5 or 10% of every single interim payment. It builds up a massive pot of money just to ensure you actually finish the job and don't walk away.
And getting it back is a two-stage process, right?
You get the first 50% released when you get the taking over certificate, which is basically when you hand over the keys and the facility becomes operational.
And the other 50%.
You wait. You have to wait out the defects notification period, which is usually a year or sometimes 2 years.
Oh, wow.
The employer keeps that second half just in case things break or hidden defects appear that you refuse to come back and fix.
And the text notes that if there is remaining work to be done, the employer can just keep withholding the estimated cost of that work. So you don't automatically get the check when the period ends. You have to prove the work is totally flawless.
Correct. It keeps the contractor strictly on the hook until the very, very end.
Speaking of the end, let's fast forward. The project is physically done. The warranty period is over. We are looking at clauses 14.10 through 14.14, the final payment.
This is the danger zone. I have seen more contractors lose legitimate money in this final month than in the previous 3 years combined.
Why? The actual work is done. What's the risk at this point?
The risk is a specific document called the discharge in clause 14.12.
Discharge. It sounds like something from a hospital.
It's lethal, commercially speaking. To get your final payment, the contract requires you to sign a written discharge. This document basically says the final statement represents the full and final settlement of all monies due to me.
Full and final. So if I sign that,
you are totally done. You cannot come back 6 months later and say, oh, I forgot to bill for that extra structural steel work, or I forgot about that delay claim from year 2.
wow.
Once you sign the discharge, the door is slammed shut, locked, bolted, welded.
And clause 14.14 backs this up, right? Cessation of employer's liability.
Exactly. The speak now or forever hold your peace clause. The text clearly states the employer is not liable for anything that is not explicitly included in the final statement.
With exceptions for fraud or gross negligence, usually.
Sure, but good luck proving fraud in a commercial court. For normal claims, if it's not in the final statement, it legally doesn't exist anymore.
But this creates a huge pressure point, doesn't it? What happens if the contractor and employer agree on, say, 90% of the final bill, but they are fiercely fighting over the last 10%? Does the contractor have to refuse to sign the discharge and hold up the entire payment just to fight for the scraps?
That absolutely used to be the case in older contracts, and it caused massive financial deadlocks. But the 2017 Silver Book actually has a very elegant solution. You can submit a partially agreed final statement.
So they can get paid the 90% they agree on and then fight about the rest later.
Exactly. It unblocks the cash flow, you pocket the agreed amount, you sign a discharge regarding just that part, and you carve out the disputed 10% for arbitration or the dispute avoidance board.
That seems like a very practical mechanism. It prevents the employer from just starving the contractor into submission at the very end.
It does. It keeps the oxygen flowing when you need it most.
So zooming out, we have traced the money from the advance payment loan through the monthly obstacle course of clause 14.3, surviving the retention cuts, using the automatic interest as a silent weapon, and finally navigating the discharge trap.
It is a rigorous, exhausting process. And coming back to your intro, cash flow really is oxygen. Clause 14 is the ventilator. If you don't follow the procedures, if you miss a deadline, fail to provide a guarantee, or sign a discharge too early, you are cutting off your own air supply.
It really emphasizes that in these major projects, contract administration is just as important as the actual physical construction. You can build the best bridge in the world, but if you can't navigate Clause 14, you might go bankrupt doing it.
Absolutely. I always tell my clients the project manager needs to be 50% engineer and 50% lawyer. If they are 100% engineer, the project will fail financially.
Well, this has been a fascinating look at the financial engine of the Silver Book. Before we go, is there one last thing from the source material that keeps you up at night? One lurking variable we haven't touched on yet.
Yes, actually. Clause 14.15, currencies of payment.
Oh, right, because these are massive international projects.
Exactly. You might be a European contractor building a hydroelectric dam in South America. Your home costs are in euros, but the contract might pay you a significant portion in the local currency.
And if the local currency crashes?
Clause 14.15F has a mechanism for this, but it is incredibly complex and almost always disputed. Think about this. You sign a lump sum contract. You think your price is totally fixed.
Right, reestablish that.
But if you are getting paid in a local currency that crashes halfway through the 5-year project, and your actual supply costs are in US dollars or euros, that fixed lump sum might suddenly be worth half of what you thought it was.
So the fixed price isn't actually fixed when you factor in exchange rates?
Yeah. It raises a very provocative question. In a highly volatile global economy, is a fixed price ever truly fixed? Or is it just a massive gamble on the foreign exchange markets disguised as a construction contract?
That is a terrifying thought to end on. If you're listening out there, read your contracts, people, especially the fine print about the money.
And especially the fine print about the currency.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Clause 14. We will catch you on the next one.
If you're interested in the templates, please visit our shop. The link is in the description.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see next time.